Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Friday. It's July the 19th, and this will be our chart lesson for today. And it turned out to be a really nice trend, but it just was so slow. And I mean, most of the movement came late in the day, and all day I kept telling myself, this is an uptrend. It's just a choppy one, and the odds are we're probably going to retest um, retest the highs from the new high we made yesterday. And sure enough, before the day was over, you can see we made another new high, and we closed up there. So, but having the patience to get there was another thing. And of course, most of the movement, like I said, didn't come until the last 30 minutes of trading. And I'm guessing that everybody realized where we were going. And it looks like that I maybe miscalculated this next channel. It looks like it's probably, let me just show you how I do this. It's probably, this is probably what our next channel was. And you can see, look at that, to the tick. So I was doing it in these halves, but I really should have probably done the whole channel. But by the time it didn't matter, I wasn't really watching. I probably would have adjusted that when we went right on through that level. So, but you can see that there's this channel we broke through and we went to the other. And always the clues that you may have another channel up there is, or below, is if prices are getting up there. And you can see once later in the day, everybody saw this, and it was really acting as resistance until they got on through there. And a couple of times today, it was really frustrating. I bought and let them shake me out with a tick or two, and then re-entered at a worse price, and got, and then get shook out again. So, it just was one of those days. It was very frustrating because we just couldn't really move quickly. We had a couple of nice spurts, but that was about it. This was a good trade, a real quick one, and this was, and everything else was like pulling teeth. You just had to fight it out. But hopefully you could find these channels. And really, I traded it more like a trading range early, and then I switched. I still was trading the lows like a range, but I was a little afraid to sell these highs. I thought every time we were going higher, because I was looking for prices to make a new high. I was really looking for prices to test this level right here. You can see I marked that, and we had some highs there from yesterday. Okay, had an interruption there, but anyway, clear uptrend today. You could have traded it a couple of different ways. You could have seen it a couple of different ways. And for the most part, we were just doing we just kind of moved up in these little channels, but you can see there was a clear trend channel, and then we broke above it. It made a measured move from the lower channel straight up to the tick to the higher channel. And so that was really what I saw. But let me show you what I saw early on. It's really kind of a trading range here. The lows were originally down here, but I moved them up. Let's just move this down for now so you can see it. That's where I had my line. And then, of course, I had my highs up here, and they were really right along there. Later on, earlier, I had them here, and of course, we broke below that. Notice how it's about the same distance below as it is above, and that's generally what will happen. You get kind of measured moves. If you overshoot something on one side, you'll usually overshoot it about that much on the other side, or undershoot it that much as well. That can happen. So. But anyway, we had a two-legged move up, and then we were moving back down. We had a first entry. Let me get this out of the way, and let me back out a little more as well. We were moving down. We had a first entry long, pullback, second entry long, and look where that nice little reversal bar was, right there at that previous low. Nothing but stems down here. We're way away from the EMA. This is one of those where, you might have tried a limit order, but if you weren't really quick with it, you probably didn't get filled because it moved on pretty quick, because it just, it started hitting the stops from all these people that got short, and it wasn't but just a blink, and it was back up here. And then we had a double top, but everything, we were making higher highs and higher lows at this point, so I was a little hesitant to short here. Even though there is a second entry short, I don't think it was a very good setup. And again, there's a lot of overlap in here, so I didn't like going short right there. I saw this trend line. I wasn't sure about this middle, this median line yet. So, but when it came down here and bounced off that line again, I didn't like going long here, although you could have if you want to be real aggressive. I waited for this one right here, and when it broke above, I used a limit order just right at the top. There's plenty of room to get out here, and of course it went straight to that point fairly quickly. And this time, now you got a double top, and you got that little doji at the top, so a chance to get short. And it's coming off this line as well. Normally I wouldn't, in an uptrend, I probably wouldn't say short this, but you couldn't ignore this resistance across here. And so I started trading this, and by this time I'd moved this up. And you can see there's a fairly clear trend channel there. So I was trading this like I'm sorry, not a trend channel, trading range. So I started trading this like a trading range and pretty much traded the rest of this like that. I just was a little afraid to sell it anymore, because I really had this target up here, a minimum target of right here. But you can see and the idea in the back of my head that we may take out the high from yesterday, because important areas like that, they get retested, and usually pretty quickly. So that's what I was looking for. But a short here, easy short, and then a chance to get long again at the low, a little bit higher low. It came right off that line again. This is a nice reversal bar. Again, it took it a minute to move on, but it did, and it comes right back, no runners, and then you got hung up in this. And I like this one because of the trap. We broke higher. You can't really see that. We broke higher, pulled back, and broke higher again, and then turned down. So that was a nice place to go short. Fairly small doji, easy stop, and of course you're looking for it to come back down and either at least test this, and maybe test this low, and it did both. But you notice how it closed inside those lines again. So then you come down here. This one I circled them both. There's really two entries down here. You could have gone long here. But it's almost always better to wait on a second entry if there's been no other attempt to go higher. So it was probably better to wait on this line here. But you had to buy these lows, because that was really the only way to trade this. It's so tight, you just sell the highs and buy the lows. And this time we got everybody trapped right here, and we went straight on up, made a new high, and then we got stuck up there above. Notice there's a first entry long. There's really, what we want to do is wait for them to test this at least twice, and they did. But by the time it got back up here, I didn't like that setup. There's too much overlap. You can see right there, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a doji. That's a doji. So the only way to enter here was when it broke higher was to drop a limit order in here, and that's the way I entered, or that's the way I was going to attempt to enter. But it came back to, by the time it would have filled it, but you had too much movement to the downside here. I didn't like buying with that big bearish bar, so I just sat tight and didn't end up entering on this one as bad as I wanted to. And I wish I had of, because if I'd have entered there, it would have worked out. So I waited till here to enter. And when this bar right here, I just used a stop above this one because I really thought we were going to take on off and make another leg like this. So this is where I got fooled. I entered a stop on this, and it goes up, and I don't get filled, and it comes back, and it closes inside. And then this one goes up, and it comes back, and it stops. And when it did that, I let it shake me out here. And then I made another mistake, because then it pulls back, and it tries to go higher. And I should have known better than to go long right here. But all the same, I did, and it broke higher, filled me, and I should have at least used a limit order. That would have got me a little bit more room. But so here I am making a mistake going long at the high, and when this bar entered, I got really worried. And so when it came back up here again, I realized my mistake, and I exited with a tick. It pulls down. Of course, it ends up going higher, but you just can't take a chance on that. So I bought here. Fairly easy scalp on this one. And again, I used a limit order here because of the little bit of overlap before it broke higher. I didn't quite get filled. It comes back down. It goes up. And I let them shake me out again. And it comes back down. It did make a little bit of a lower low there, but you had a chance to get back in again here. And so this was a long. Looking back at it, it was a little bit risky. It's a second entry long, but we weren't quite back to this line, and I'm guessing that's why we kept working our way back. Notice how this one touched right off of it, but it still came back again. And they just couldn't get back. The resistance areas were just really tough today. And but eventually it went on, but I was done trading by then. That's past our noon hour. There's not really a good setup here, or I probably would have marked this one. The next chance you really had a chance to enter was here and here, and it's so late in the day. Obviously, you know, it would have paid off, but you know, most of the time it doesn't pay off. And the last thing I want to do is enter in here and the last 30 minutes of the day and get stuck in something, you know, and not make it through there. So, but if you drew your short-term trend lines, that helps a lot. That really gave you confidence on these two trades to enter them. We were working down. We didn't really have a break of this trend line here, and I wasn't paying, you know, I wasn't paying this trend line as much attention. It really, I think it was right here. We did have the break and two tries to go lower, so that's why I like that trade. As long as you had your stop down here, you were okay, but it did come back again. So, and I just didn't, there really wasn't a good place to enter this one at all, unless you waited on this break and used a limit order. But with all that resistance across there in that line, it's just dangerous to go long right there. And again, this is just, notice that it's just a little trading range. It fell out the top, pulled back. It fell out the bottom, fell out the top a couple of times before it finally got going again. So you can't ignore that. So just it was a difficult day. It was for me. I got to admit, I got so frustrated. But twice I let them shake me out of a trade that if I'd have hung on would have worked. But you don't want to hang on through a move like this, because what if we do go lower? And it's always a possibility that that happens. So, you know, when you get when you get a reversal like that, a little double top, a one tick failed break, and then a lower high, you know, this was almost worth shorting. If it hadn't have been, the EMA hadn't have been straight up and so close, I might have shorted that. But I really didn't think it would go all the way back down. I thought it would bounce off this line, but they just couldn't. Nobody was really selling it, but nobody was really buying big time today. It just it's kind of a weak uptrend is what I'd call it. You know, backing out and looking at it at the end of the day, it's obvious that it was, you know, it was moving up all day. But when you're in here early, if you can't see what happened the rest of the day, that looks like a big trading range, and it really is a couple of different levels of a range, and you just got to trade it like a range. And that means you probably could have shorted this up here, but I just didn't feel like it was worth doing, because the overall trend was up. By that time you could see it, you know, that it's, you know, we're going higher and higher, and you should have been able to have this channel. I mean, you could find this channel really early, but what threw me off was, you know, these highs. I was looking for it here, and then, you know, but then you could see you were finding resistance right across here. So that's why I switched to these range rules right in here, and just kind of, you know, I was trying to be aware of the channel, but you couldn't ignore the range coming up and down through there. So those highs and those lows, and that was really what was holding prices more than this channel was. So when you got them both at your back, that makes it even better. And same thing right here. Notice you got them both at your back here to go short, and it did go all the way down in a little two-legged move. So but anyway, that's what I saw for the day. If you struggled a little bit today, I mean, I hope maybe it was just me, I don't know, but I felt like I was very unproductive today. I second-guessed myself a lot because I wasn't sure if it was a range or if I had this right. You know, later in the day it's obvious I had it right, but you know, when you've got it down here, you're not so sure. Especially when you're way down here, it looks more like a trading range right there. And that's why I was trading it that way off both sides. But once we kept going higher, and I could see that, you know, it looked like my channel was really good, then I just switched to only buying. And even then, I didn't do so well. I second guessed myself and let them shake me out. But there were so many traps, you couldn't really enter on failed second entries and things in here because they were failing in both directions. You just had to know where the strong support was or the strong resistance was and go with it. That's really the only way you could trade this. And you know, once we got up in this other range here and it was clear if you saw this channel, then you really just had to switch to buying, which is what I did. So but that's really it for today. And again, one other thing I want to do real quick, somebody asked me about, they wrote to me, they said they weren't sure where the entries were. Well, let's just show you that real quick. There's two different questions in that same thing. One of them is, how do you enter on the signal bar? Well, this is your signal bar down here to go long. So your trigger is one tick above that. You've got two options on how you can enter that, though. Generally, your best bet, especially when you're new, is just drop once this bar forms, drop a stop, a buy stop right above it. If it breaks above, you get filled. If it doesn't and prices go on, then you reevaluate. But the trigger is the break. So you could wait for it to break and then use a limit order, but you can't, I don't recommend doing that at strong support or strong resistance if you're going short, because because of this strong support across here, it can't get back down there. So, you either got to go right there at the top, or maybe, I don't even think I'd be willing to try a tick in. I just use a stop right. Okay, I got interrupted there. But anyway, if this is your signal bar, you just place a stop above it. And if the stop's triggered, then you're in the trade. That's a second entry long. It's coming off supports. That's what you want to see. And that's the kind of place you want to enter. It's scary entering down here, but look what would have happened. And, most people are trying to enter short down here. There was a short right here, but it was a trap. It went higher first and broke out the other side. So again, you have a stop there, you use a limit order and drop it a tick or so. But like if you don't want to use a stop here, you got to wait for it to trigger and break above and then drop your limit order wherever you think you want to be. If it's a big bar like this and you can't get in it with 2 points, then once it triggers, maybe you drop it in a tick or two, or maybe, sometimes you can get filled halfway down a bar. But the more conservative you get, the more apt you might be to miss out on a good trade. But your entry goes here, and once it's triggered, your stop goes a tick or two below that bar, no more than 2 points. That's the rule. And, we don't want to lose more than 2 points because we're only scalping for, 1 point. But the key is we're using runners too, just like right here. A runner, you could have ridden it all the way to the top, and it ends up being worth 3 points on the runner. So the runners will offset a lot of your losses. But if you get to where you read this stuff properly, you can see what happens every time it gets to support or resistance. If you buy the support and stay away from buying the highs, and you sell the resistance and stay away from buying the resistance, you're going to make money. You're going to start to get this right more times than you get it wrong, and then it's not a problem if you scalp out every trade. So keep that in mind. But one other thing I want to show you is somebody was asking me about traps. All right, notice right here we got a pullback. Actually, the high is here. So okay, let me show you this. You got a first entry long, pull back a second entry long. Where is it a trap? The minute any price is broke, once it triggered long right here, this is not a good setup because you don't want to be going long here because of the resistance. But let's just assume this would have been a good second entry long right here. Notice the new high, your pullback. There's your first entry as this moved from here to here. Then it pulls back again. So now if it breaks above the next bar, that's a second entry long. Well, it broke higher right here. So that was a second entry long right there. Again, it's not a very good setup. You would have wanted to wait on this bar. That's really your signal bar, that break there. But by the time you get up here, you're too close to resistance. But let's just say you entered right here. This was a good setup we liked, and you entered long right there. And prices are headed up on that second entry long. Well, the first time they break below any other bar, without reaching the scalp, it's a trap. It's a failure anyway. It's not necessarily a trap, but it's a failure. And so that was a failed second entry long. It ended up going on and getting it, but because this wasn't really a good short setup here. It wasn't really a good long setup either way. But you might have considered taking that trap right there. If you had, you would have got trapped, and it definitely went on and got its second entry, or its scalp. So it really wasn't a failure. But that's what you're looking for. Let me see if I can find one that makes sense. There's just not any today. I mean, if you tried to take traps today, you really probably didn't do too well. Here's one right here. Here, coming off that low. Okay, here's your new high. There. Well, no, there was a first. Just say that was all one move. Then your first entry pullback, and that was a second entry long right there. Well, it didn't go very far, and it turns down. So your trap. It becomes a trap the minute it breaks below that bar. So there's your trap right there, and you see it would have made your 4 ticks. I hope that makes sense. There's just not any real good examples in there today. See if I can see any others. Here's one right here. Notice you made a new high. You get a pullback. First entry long. Another pullback, and then a second entry long right there. Notice that was your first bar to go fall higher, then you're coming back, and then there's your second one. So your second entry long triggered right there, and look what happened. It immediately turned down. So you got trap traders there. So if it breaks below that bar, that triggers the trap, and you can see it was good for a scalp, and it would have got you in that trade and worked on lower. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Those were a couple of questions that people asked me that I wanted to try to answer. So, but anyway, it's Friday. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm here a lot later than I wanted to be for a Friday. I was trying to hang around to see if this thing was going to go higher and if I could get a chance to enter, but I just never really liked it. So, but I hope you had a good trading day, a good trading week. Hope, we'll be back to do it again next week. And I'm going to wrap it up for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next.